Welcome back to a new episode of Mastering Programming. In today's episode, I'll teach you how you can create your own API using Python. Now, this API will have two different endpoints, one that gets you a specific article. For example, we've got here article with ID 100, and when I search for it, it brings it. Or one that will say that you can simply get all articles, like saying articles all, and you can see here now we got all the articles that we get, and you can see also our server interacts with it. And also we're going to be having a post function, so we're going to be getting and also posting and giving more information with our API itself. This is going to be very simple. I'm going to take you from the beginnings, from installing modules to installing apps that you can test it. Everything will be mentioned in this tutorial. You can also view the source code for this project on my GitHub using the link in the description. Please make sure you do leave a like and a subscribe before we get started. And let's keep going. Welcome back, everyone. Now, in order to test our API, I will be using an app called Insomnia. Now, this is a free app and you can actually get it from this URL here, just insomnia.rest. If you don't want to download anything, that's not a problem. You can actually just install like a Chrome extension. It's called RESTman. If I go to RESTman, you can also use the same methods of testing, and you'll see how we're testing it. You'll be able to apply it here as well. However, I recommend using Insomnia just because you can actually install it and it just gives you some better like options and so on. The UI is also much easier to use. I'll be using PyCharm in order to actually write this project, and if things look different, like if you get, unless it's like an error or anything like that, don't stress. It's probably just because I have like a theme here that allows me to do it in purple. So let's get started, and the first thing that I'm going to be doing is let's just make sure that you're on Python 3 and above, so not Python 2.7. And you're gonna go over here and we're gonna import a couple of different libraries. So first of all, let's start with Flask. So I'm going to say from Flask import star, and that allows me to import everything from Flask. Now you might still be having an issue here, and it's might saying, oh, you can't find Flask or whatever, and this goes on for all the other libraries I'll use. All you need to do in order to fix this is just go to terminal and type in pip3 install Flask and then hit enter. I'm not going to do it because I already have it, but once you do this, you will be able to actually install Flask on your PyCharm project. Let's go ahead and move on. So actually, let me just remove this in case I click it by accident. I can just do that. And then we're going to import JSON. So import and then just type in JSON, import UUID, and import random. So these are all the libraries that all the modules, that we're going to be using. Again, if you get any errors like saying, oh, we can't find this or we can't find that, just pip3 and then install and then put the name of whatever it is that you're actually wanting to install. So let's get started by typing app equal to Flask, open and close a bracket or like parentheses. Inside of here, we're going to be putting 2 underscores, name 2 underscores. And then we're going to be creating, because we're going to basically be filtering this from articles, like a bunch of articles. I already have some default data here, so I'm just gonna copy it and paste it. And you can check the project documentations for this if you don't want to write it yourself as well. Basically, there's just a list of articles. You can see I've got like an ID, title, date, some text, and then some tags. And I just have 3 different articles here just for an example so we can get started. And I'll teach you how to add and filter and query and stuff. It's pretty cool stuff. Then I'm going to go in order. So I'm going to be creating an temp articles equal to open and close a square bracket. We're going to be creating temp articles IDs equal to open and close a bracket, and then I'll say temp tags equal to open and close a bracket. And these we will use them later on. I'm just going in order so everything is simple and you have everything. So we're just going to create them here for now, and then I'll show you exactly what we're going to be using them for. First thing, let's actually create our API, and you will not believe how easy this is. The first thing I'll do is I'll create an app.root. Inside of here, I'm going to be putting a slash like this, and then I'll say methods equal to, open and close a bracket, and then inside of here I'll put get with all caps, like this. Okay, so obviously we're now creating our first get function, and it's just going to be found in the normal root URL that we're going to get. Then what we need to do is we need to create a function inside of here, and we're just going to call it homepage, like this. Sorry. And inside of here, we're just going to return a welcome message. So I will say welcome message equal to open and close the zigzaggy bracket. Inside of here, we're going to have two things. We're going to return page, and then we're going to let the user know what page they're on. So they're going to be on the home page when they first visit this URL. And then we'll put a message. So we'll say message. And then inside of here, we're just going to say this is the home page of the API. There we go. Finally, let's just add one more thing, and that is actually returning this to the user. So we're going to say return welcome message. So let's just take a second to understand what we actually wrote. First, here we're defining that we want this function to run when the user goes to this URL, to the main URL, and you'll see the URL that gets generated for us. And then we're specifying what HTML functions we're using, or the endpoint, and that is a get endpoint. That's all we're doing. After this, we're creating a function inside which creates a message. It just says, hey, the message is just page home, and then underneath it there's another actual body message, and it says this is the home page of the API. So when someone visits this, this is what will be presented to us. Now, all we need to do now is to run this. I'm just going to go over here, and I'll type if 2 underscores name 2 underscores is equal to, again, 2 underscores main. Then what we want to do is run this app. So I'll say app.run, open and close the bracket. Believe it or not, that's all we need to do to actually run our API. Now, it's a very simple API at the moment. It just says this, but it is an API. If I run it, you'll see it says running on this URL. And if I actually just click on this, it will open your normal browser, and it will do exactly what we told it to do. It returned page home, and it also returned our message. Now, I'm just going to copy this, and I'll plug this into Insomnia just to show you how things look like. And if I click on send, so now we're doing a get call. You can see we've got get post, which is exactly what we're going to create. And in get, we return our message over here in a JSON format. You can also see that every time I'm going to do this, our server, our API, is actually getting these calls. So it's pretty cool. So now let's add actual useful stuff. As you can see, we've got articles. And the first thing that I want to do is I want to create a function or an endpoint that presents all the articles to the user. So let's go ahead and actually do that. I'm going to type in app.root, and then I'm going to put a slash, and then I'll say articles, and I'll say all, because we're returning all the articles. And then here I will say methods equal to, and inside of here, this is a get endpoint, so I'm gonna say methods and then get. Now, what does this actually mean? Just because it can be confusing, all we're saying here, it's simple, is if the user visits this URL, this is what this stands for, basically, where there's no slashes. But this one, it's gonna be our root URL, which is this, slash articles. Oh, this is basically all we're saying. And if I send now, nothing is gonna happen. You can see not found, because we didn't create it yet. So let's go ahead and actually create it. Inside of here, I'm going to create a function, and I'm just gonna call it return articles. And I wanna return all my articles. So all I'm gonna do is I'm going to type in return, and I wanna return them in a JSON format. So I'm gonna use something here called JSONify, and then I'll pass in articles. So I'll simply type in articles. And if I just save this, refresh, stop and rerun. Now we've got it, and send this again. You can see that now we're returning all of our articles. So in a real world scenario, a company will have these articles in a database or somewhere, and they will create this API where they can share with the world. And when you go on it, you'll get this back as an API in a JSON format. Let's move forward. And obviously, what's the point of an API if you can't specify what you want? So now I'm going to specify which article I want based on the ID over here. It's very easy. And again, this is another example of an get endpoint. So I'll say app, and this is going to be basically what we're going to be doing the whole time, app dot root whatever. And then this time inside, again, we're going to put slash, but we're going to be typing articles, another slash. So now we're even adding more to the URL. Open and close like these. I forgot what they're called, but you can see it. And then put string to specify what sort of information are we expecting back from the user ID. So basically we want to filter the articles based on the ID provided in the URL. So articles -2, for example, and it will show the article that has 2. So that's how we said articles. And then here we're specifying we want a string, and that will be the ID. Then let's continue. Again, this is a very normal get endpoint. Get. And then I'm going to say def, there we go. And I'll say return matched. And I'll pass in the parameter, so it will be of type ID. And then let's actually go through the list of the articles, compare the ID that's given, and the one that has the same ID, return it. So to do this, I'm just going to create another variable called called matched article. Say it's equal to, open and close a square bracket, and I'll say article for article in articles if article, so many articles, ID is equal to ID. This is just basically a fancy way of for looping through this list and comparing whether the ID provided is actually found. And if it is, we're going to save it on matched article. And we're going to return the entire article that contains that ID. So very simple. Now, all we need to do now that we assigned it, well, now we just need to return it. So again, very simple. And you will start realizing a pattern here. We're simply going to say return JSONify, and then I'm going to simply put in or pass in matched article. Very simple stuff actually. So I'm going to refresh this, and now we're running again. And all I'll do now is I'll go to the endpoint, I'll type in articles / and then I'll just pass in an ID. So let's try get this article 1. I'm gonna pass in 1, I'll click on send, and now we get 1 article back. As you can see, here we go. And is it matching? Yes, we've got the ID, it's the same. 1 date, yes, it is the correct date, body, some text, and my 1 title. So clearly it is working. Let's try another example. Let's try 2, for example, and we can get now article 2. If I put in article 0, then I'll be getting article 0. So again, try link this to a real scenario. A user will probably click on a button, the URL will change, you'll get more information out of it. So another one that we need to do is, now I want to filter, this is pretty cool, but we're just going to create one more post function here, and that will allow us to actually add articles. Now there was another get function that I was going to do, but you can see in the source code, I'm not going to add it here just to waste time. It's just more complicated stuff, but you get the idea of get endpoint. Now let's create a post endpoint. So for this one, I'm going to call it at app.root. And to get to this one, you basically need to go to articles, and we're going to say methods equal to, and post. Oh my god, sorry about that. Inside of here, we're going to type in def and then call our function add articles. Very suitable name. I bought this new keyboard and I'm still not used to it. And then inside of here, before we add anything, just because this can cause any issues, I want to check if the ID that the user is going to enter, because we're gonna basically add um, an article in a JSON format and update it, add it to this list. So before anything, let's just make sure that the ID is different so that we don't duplicate IDs. So to do this, I'm just going to say new ID is equal to request dot JSON. And then inside of here, I'm going to pass ID. So basically, we're checking what the user entered and we're going to save it inside of ID. So if the user says 3, just like we did earlier, now new ID will carry that value. And we're going to check if the ID exists or not. So we're going to say existing article is equal to, and we're going to use our fancy way of for looping. I'll say article article for article in articles if article bracket ID is equal to new ID. So we're checking if any articles actually contain the same ID. So if they already have been added, then what we want to do is we're still going to add it, but we just want to add an extra character at the end so that we don't have two similar IDs. So I'll say if existing article dot length. So if the length of this is not equal to 0, which means yes, an ID of that an article with that ID has already been created, what we want to do is we simply want to add, and I'm going to say space, we want to add a dash, and then we're just going to add a random character. So to do this, I'm going to say str, and then I'll say random dot rand int, and let's just put it between 0 and 100. Now let's actually add the article. So I'll say article to add is equal to, and then we're going to say ID. So the information going in, if you want to add it to a list, it has to match exactly like this. So actually, smart idea would be to just copy this like this and go over here and just change it. So for ID, what we want to do is we want to actually add our new ID. For title, we want to add request dot JSON, open and close a bracket, and here pass in title. And I'll show you where we actually get this from in a second. It's going to be very easy. Again, we're going to say request dot JSON. Here I'm going to pass in date. For body, same exact thing. Honestly, it's very easy. We're going to say request dot JSON, open and close a bracket, and inside of here, what are we actually collecting? Body. Finally, for the tags, and this is maybe the only one that can be a little bit confusing, but I'll show you exactly what you can do with it. What we want to do is we want to remove this, and we want to say request dot JSON, sorry for my dog barking, and open and close a bracket, and inside of here, again, we're going to be passing tags. Okay, now that we've got all the elements needed to actually add this to our article, what we then need to do is we need to go to the articles. So we're referencing back to our main articles list, and I'll say append. And then here I'll just add the articles to add. Okay, so now we've got this. Now let's actually return. Now that we add it, let's just return the entire articles list so that the customer can be aware that it was added. I said customer, but like user. Just unify, and then we're just gonna add the entire articles list. Let's just reformat this so it looks much better. Oh, okay. So all we need to do is simply just add the ID inside of quotation marks. I am so sorry. Like this. And now this should work. So if we refresh this, and now I'm gonna send it, you can see that we now added an extra article because 0 and then 93. Let's just change one thing. I'm just gonna put like 100 and click and send. Now we've got 100 added, and we can keep doing this as much as we want, and it will actually add articles. Not just that, but we can even filter it as much as we want. So we can say something like articles and then 100 and change this to a get and send, and now I'm getting the list that has ID 100. Thanks so much for watching this episode. I hope you did enjoy it, and I hope you benefited a lot from it, and I hope to see you again in the next episode.